Hello, and welcome to another episode of What Do We Do Now? A conversation about the live event industry. Today, I'm joined by Jean. Say hello, Jean.
Hello, everyone.
How are you
How are
today?
you? I'm really well, thank you. Very well indeed.
Fabulous and refreshed. I heard you were just away on a little holiday.
I went visiting various people who work in live events and was made very welcome in southwest England and had a fabulous time. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. That sounds really lovely. Let's jump into the questions. How did you get your start in the live event industry? Tell us about your origin story.
I think, like a lot of people who started 40 plus years ago, it was a lucky break or an unlucky break, whichever way you look at it. I'd read English and drama at Birmingham University, and in my uni holidays, Roger Sinclair, who ran Sound Developments, gave me a break to work on reception, and then I worked a bit in the AV department, and I was allowed to direct soundtracks. And one of the companies that used to come and record their soundtracks there was MMA Presentations. And through an introduction by the composer, I met Malcolm Mitchell, and Malcolm invited me to go and see a show for Granada Television when people rented TVs. Seems an anathema now.
Wow.
Absolutely. And from there, Malcolm gave me the opportunity to work at MMA as a kind of graduate trainee, not that anybody called it back then. And I worked in every different department. MMA went on to become ICM and then HPICM. But it was founded by people from theatre, people who made films. So it was a very, very interesting and eclectic mix of people who had so much to offer me as a graduate trainee. I didn't even know live events was a thing. It was called industrial theatre back then because it was musical theatre, really, with corporate speeches interwoven round a red thread. It was great times.
Amazing. It sounds like a lot of fun. As you look back across your career, what would you say was your favourite job and why?
When you've had such a long career, it's very, very hard to pick out one event. But I had an amazing experience working with Park Avenue back in 2003 when Simon Tapping was the creative director and Moira Hunter, RIP, was the production manager. We did a show for HS Nordbank in an ice rink in Hamburg, and it was a proper musical theatre show which George May brought all the live action together. So that definitely one highlight. But actually, I would also say that some of the charity work I've done for the Haven Trust and the Sepsis Trust, working for nothing, strangely, has been more rewarding than working for money. And I think that can often be the case for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I was speaking to Nikki just yesterday on one of these, and she kind of, as well as that, what was your favorite job and why? She kind of said to me, like, well, kind of, obviously you got into the industry, but what made you stay in the industry for so long? Did you say 40 years now?
Yeah, 40 years.
What is it about it? What is it about it that made you stay?
I think it's totally addictive. I think a lot of people who work in live events would agree with that. You get this, you start with nothing, and with a group of colleagues, you make something. And as Nikki said yesterday, you've got one opportunity to get it right. Usually, sometimes you're lucky and you do have a run of shows. But that drive to get it right on the first time, the first and only time, when so much is often resting on it from a point of view of client budget, client reputation, agency reputation, all the people who are working on it, everybody's reputation. And I can't think of any other type of industry where we work in such close quarters with one another and feel that drive and passion. It's amazing.
It is. It really, really is. I think the sad thing at the moment is, I suppose, that all of that is on hold. When did it hit you that things were going to change in such a significant way?
I was working on a European roadshow with an American agency, and I was actually out in the Far East. I'd been doing some presentation training for a client, And it
Mhm.
became obvious that, I mean, it was very obvious when I was out in the Far East that things were pretty bad. And as I read
Yeah.
the news, I began to see that it was hitting Italy, it was hitting Spain. And I was due to come back and then do recces in Stockholm, Amsterdam, and Madrid. And I kept
Mhm.
messaging the American agency saying, "Are you sure? Are you sure this is going ahead?" And I flew back, and the very next day, opened my emails to say the whole project had been put on hold, but we were going to still get
Yeah.
together. They were actually on planes on the way over to from the US to the UK for
Wow.
meetings. So we went ahead and had the initial meeting with the client
Mm.
and with the agency, but
Yeah.
obviously all the records were put on hold. So we were carrying on working in the background, but by the
Mm.
middle of March, it was still on hold, and then
Yeah,
the
yeah.
following week everything was cancelled pretty much. So yeah, I mean, I think before we locked down here, it was
Yeah, yeah.
beginning to be obvious. I mean, and don't forget, we'd also had the cancellations of NWC
Yeah.
and the Geneva Motor
Yeah.
Show. So, and that was when I was in the
Yeah,
Far
yeah.
East. So I was
Yeah.
getting this feeling of, oh my goodness
Mm.
me, this is going to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
bad.
And that was 5 months ago now. Like, what do you make of the current situation? You know, there's an awful lot is I guess the rate of change, I suppose, is the thing that's changed, that's increasing. And there's an awful lot of sadness that's going on at the moment. But what do you make of it all?
I've got such mixed feelings. I think, obviously some people are working, doing virtual events,
Hmm.
whether
Yeah.
whether there is already ennui around virtual events from in the corporate sector, I'm not sure.
Definitely.
It's not really my bag. I come from theatre, so I haven't
Mm.
particularly pursued getting work in that arena. Um,
Mm.
the event last week, We Make Events, was
Yeah.
extraordinary because it was the
Yeah.
coming
Tell me
together
about that.
of so many people who were out of work. And I think it was sad, it was uplifting, it was emotional. I mean, hats off to Gary White
Mm.
and his team, because they really
Yeah.
pulled something off in 10 days. They had 10
Yeah.
days
Yeah.
lead time. So that was
Yeah. Yeah.
incredible and demonstrates to the world what an extraordinary industry we are and how we can make things
Mm.
happen.
Mm.
It's I mean,
And
I
rumours
think
of
that,
another one as well. I don't know whether that's true or not. There's certainly
yeah, I
rumours of
think on
another
the
one.
on the 28th of August there are rumours of another one.
Mm.
Um, but
Cool.
there are things opening up. We're getting very mixed messages. We're getting messages from the government
Hmm.
that venues can reopen, and then in the next breath talking about social distancing. And it simply
Hmm.
isn't going to be economically viable for theatres and closed
No.
music venues probably to open up unless the acts donate their time, or perhaps if it's a one-man show. I mean, I don't know. You've got to find a way of making the show for less money so the ticket prices can be lower, and of course, social distancing has to be observed. The event that's
Yeah,
happening
the
in Newcastle
finances
at
of
the
it are
moment.
so challenging, aren't they? Like trying to find a business model that's going to survive this is top of many people's agenda at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. I think the corporate sector is the most
Mm.
difficult sector of all, because I don't think clients have an appetite to bring their staff together. They're not even reopening their London offices or their regional offices. People are working from home, and all the indications are that's
Mm.
going to be at least until January 2021 or even longer. So it's
Mm.
very hard for people in the corporate sector unless you're doing content and messaging
Yep.
and possibly
Yep.
for producers. But clearly for production
Mm.
managers, logistics, not to mention the vast array of crew, it's really, really hard. Really hard.
Definitely, definitely. Have you seen any interesting or innovative ways that people have been starting to try and put on events? I mean, there's the car park cinema stuff, but what have you seen anything else that you've come across?
But there is an event that's happening in Newcastle at the moment, which is they're putting people in pods, and I believe you can buy up to 6 people in a pod, and they must have then
Hmm.
alleyways between the pods where they're delivering food and drink, which is some of the ways that they're doing these drive-in cinema events. I
Mm.
don't know very much about it. I saw a photograph, and I've heard Chuck Crampton talking a bit about how it's working, and that is
Mm.
fascinating. But that's outdoors, and that's okay.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
nearly at
yeah.
the end of the summer, So we've kind of missed that window very, very soon. Come October, nobody's going to be doing that unless we're going to put canopies up, and all of that becomes incredibly expensive. So I don't know. I mean, I would really like to see the Evis family coming up with a way of holding Glastonbury 2021, because the announcement that it may not happen until 2022 is extremely worrying, because is there going to be anybody still around then to make Glastonbury happen? And we are the backroom people, but we're the ones who make the music acts, the theatre. We make people look good, and we've been silent, but we can't be silent anymore.
Absolutely. Just thinking about what people are going to do in the meantime. I mean, have you come across anybody, what kind of skills could freelancers kind of start to upskill on? You kind of touched on the communication angle, the fact that people are still needing to communicate and they need to communicate effectively. But is there anything that freelancers could be kind of focusing their time on to try and upskill in some of these areas?
I think that, I retrained as a coach in 2002 after 9/11 and the Second Gulf War, because my work just completely evaporated, and it was an area that I'd been interested in. So I retrained, and although I haven't coached consistently during lockdown, I've been coaching more people, and particularly freelancers, trying to help them get their heads around what are their core strengths and what else could they do. And it's been remarkably uplifting to see how bright and clever people are and how they're thinking sideways. So I think to make a list of your transferable skills and your key strengths, and what do you enjoy doing? What else could you do? And I think that's going to be particularly relevant, unfortunately, to crews right now, to find. And, clearly it's very, very sad that people have worked at Tesco, they're driving, they're working for track and trace, mostly minimum wage jobs. But if that keeps the wolf from the door, then anything will help. And some people have been very lucky that they've claimed SICE and they have had work. Now, how that will all come out in the wash at the end of their financial year, I'm not quite sure. But, the people who've only managed to get universal credit or have managed to get nothing because of the way that they've structured their PAYE, or because they haven't been freelance for long enough, or whatever, they are the people who are in dire, dire straits right now. And people are getting evicted from their homes, and it's really bad. We need the government to extend the furlough for the live event sector. That there is no doubt.
And the longer it goes on, the more challenging it gets, and I guess the more sadness occurs around the whole industry. How about you? What's next for you?
Well, interestingly, I had already started to wind down from producing. I was taking longer gaps, and was thinking more about how do I develop my coaching business, the organizational training, which I went through a shift in company ethos when I was at Momentum in the late 90s. And organizational change right now is going to have to be uppermost in most agencies' minds. And I think Nikki talked yesterday about potentially us running an academy of some description. And I have already talked to some of the agencies about how do you upskill your staff or give them those cross skills, so that they're really project managers. They're not producers or production managers or logistics anymore. They are project managers. And with their backgrounds, they will have core areas that they might be, more suited to. And I think that's a challenge for the agencies, and it's a challenge for freelancers too. So I talk to people about having a portfolio career, because the more fingers you've got and the more pies, when things go wrong, you will still work. And some people are working in restaurants, some people are showing homes round for estate agents and things like that. There are other things that we can do, but the competition for those jobs is really, really high. So the sooner you try and get other work, the better it will
Mm.
be for you as an individual, which is hard
Yeah.
if you're feeling depressed.
No, absolutely. I think the mental health challenge is a very, very real one that gets significantly worse as well as time goes on. How have you been personally along that side of things?
Well, mostly okay. And I was always encouraged to be a saver. I'm very, very lucky that I own my own home. And so
Mhm.
financially, we're relatively stable. We're very, very, very lucky, and I do appreciate that. I cracked a couple of ribs during lockdown, and I also had a kidney infection.
Oh,
So I had a
oh.
few weeks of feeling very, very, very low, and it really affected my mental
Yeah.
health and my ability to be creative. So
Mm.
health, of course, is really important. And I
Definitely.
think from that perspective, looking after oneself, taking exercise, eating healthily, not drinking too much, not taking loads of drugs. I mean, they're a panacea of the moment. But if you've got a healthy mind and a healthy body, you will be much more able to withstand the slings and arrows that are being thrown at us at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you look back across your successful career, like what is there a piece of work advice that you were given, or something that you'd like to pass on, or any particular message for the live events industry as we bring this to a close?
Well, there are a couple of things. My dad always used to say to me, "Be careful on the way up, because you're going to need every single person that you've worked with on the way up, on the way down," and that, I think, is a definite good piece of advice. I think the other thing is that, particularly at the moment, if you're offered a piece of work and you're not quite sure how to do it, say yes and surround yourself with experts who do know how to do it, and make it happen. Because right now, you've got to be in a yes frame of mind to get through this, I think.
Definitely. Well, thank you very much. This has been a really, really interesting conversation, Gene. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and we'd love to hear from different people across the industry. So please do get in touch if you'd like to join one of these conversations. But thank you, Gene, again, and goodbye for now.
Thank you, Dave.